I guess this is as good a time as any to actually get into the bulk of...
Well, yeah. I mean, now that I'm primed and fucking ready, let's go.
Okay, so last week we had 2 separate fandom outrages over the same issue.
The same suite of issues.
The same suite of issues. Let's talk about...
Let's talk about Justice League 3001 first.
Okay.
Because I feel like you can build from that conversation to get to the second piece.
Yeah, the second piece is obviously more serious.
It is.
Bigger issue.
Definitely.
First one,
in our estimation.
Happened in the first issue of Justice League 3001, which is the continuation of Justice League 3000, the Giffen and DeMatteis Justice League, the cloned Justice League of the future. Now, in this story, Cadmus is a whole planet, by the way.
Not the same Cadmus.
Well, it's like a corporate descendant.
Yes.
Has taken these test subjects and injected them with the DNA of superheroes. But the problem is they come out all wrong. Like,
there's some issues.
Their memories are all skewed. Their personalities aren't right. And
they fuck up some, phenotypical characteristics as well.
And the hijinks ensues.
Mm-hmm.
It is a not so very subtle satire over certain tropes of these characters.
And it's a futuristic continuation of JLI.
Yeah, it's directly too, because the blue and the gold have shown up in this series, and it's the real blue and the gold.
They were frozen. They were in suspended animation. It's actually Booster and Beetle from that time.
Right. So you can say this is a direct sequel, basically after I Can't Believe It's Not the Justice League. Like, this would be the next thing.
Bee and Tora are themselves too. They're just, they've been existing for thousands of years
in their own separate things.
Yeah.
This is not a book that one takes seriously.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a book which has any kind of social commentary. This is basically a book of stupid humor and hijinks and laughs.
Which makes what happened, I think it's fair to say it is a particularly thorny issue to talk about.
It's an extremely thorny issue.
And there are some good points made, and there are some not so good points made.
In our very first episode, you said your favorite character was Batman. That's actually
incorrect.
Not true.
I realized I have a short list. Batman's definitely on it. But my favorite comic book character, period, is Guy Gardner.
Now, that is going to seem really strange because you are a lady and your favorite character is basically a chauvinist pig.
The biggest, not stupidest, but sexist, awful, rage-inducing, homophobic, occasionally horrible person.
Conservative.
Yeah. And he's a fucking Republican, too, on top of it. He's an interesting character because he is so controversial and because he is, in a lot of ways, irredeemable. I find him fascinating, and I find him problematic. But... Well,
you've mentioned that you actually think he is, in some ways, more nuanced because of all
absolutely.
These flaws than most comic book characters you come across.
Absolutely. He's not a particularly sympathetic character most of the time.
Yet there are times he absolutely is.
Nor does he care to be. This is not, ladies and gentlemen out there, this is not a character who's the brooding, bad boy who can be redeemed. Guy is a fucking asshole, and he doesn't give a shit about anyone. And if you try to redeem him or, make him better, he'd probably laugh in your fucking face. He is what he is, and he's totally fine with it on most levels, and that is a problematic thing because he's a prick, but it makes for great fucking writing. One
of the great functions of him in the Bwahaha era is that he completely takes the pretension out of Batman.
Oh, so no one can stand up to Bruce, and he does.
Like, everybody quakes, character-wise, characters quake in their boots whenever Batman's around.
And he's like, fuck
and
you.
And he is never once fazed by Batman, even though he gets the one-punch treatment,
He gets the one-punch multiple times.
Right.
There's a great moment in another comic where Wonder Woman's talking to Superman, and they're on the Watchtower, and Wonder Woman's like, he knocked Guy out, and Superman's like, really? And she's like, Black Canary faxed me a photo. And it's him just, totally, KO'd on the
that's
the floor.
Later in either the Grant or the Mark Waid Justice League run.
It's fucking great. I love it. But yeah,
at least I think so.
I'm not entirely sure what it is about him, but I read the JLI run, and aside from being one of my favorite comics, period, there's just something about him I find really compelling. he makes for interesting writing. And I told you, one of my favorite moments is when he's Metamorpho shows up and actually has a great storyline.
Metamorpho's a great character.
He's an absolutely wonderful character. I can't wait for him to show up in The Flash because they mentioned, Simon Stagg.
Yes.
And he actually killed Simon Stagg, but we'll get to that. But, Guy fights him, and everyone's always whooping Guy's ass, basically. And Metamorpho fights him, and he puts him down, and he's like, let's back off. And Guy just stands up, and he goes, I'm going to kill you.
And he's completely serious.
He's dead serious. He's absolutely dead serious. And when you compare that to something like the fight that he has with Kilowog, where he goes, that was humiliating.
That was humiliating.
Like, he just has this moment, and you kind of take a step back, and you go, whoa. Like, he's fucking serious, and you're like, that's not cool. Like, you need to ratchet it down, but you don't see that in comics all that often.
Especially in the DC universe. I mean, I think one of the strengths of Guy Gardner as a character is that he is somebody who, because he lives in shades of gray
Absolutely.
more than a lot of other characters, morally, ethically, and personality-wise, he is a great contrast when you put him against characters like Wonder Woman and Superman, these iconic archetypal characters.
Even the other
he is not that.
Even the other Green Lanterns.
Like, I mean,
especially Hal.
We've even said at times there's almost more of a Marvel quality to Guy Gardner.
Yes, and I think it's the good things about Marvel.
He's basically flawed.
That's the point, he's
right?
very human. But it's important to remember for people who want to rampage on about what a horrible person he is, he's still got that fucking ring.
Yes,
he is a Green Lantern, and he was chosen. Hal just happened to be closer to the crash site.
Okay, so people might not know what you're talking about, but in the Green Lantern lore, the thing of it is who was first choice for the ring that went to Hal?
John, right?
I believe it was John, and then Guy.
And then Hal.
And then Hal. Hal was just closer.
Yeah.
And if you've read...
And that says something about these characters.
If you've read the Green Lantern that happens around the time of Crisis on Infinite Earths, Guy never lets Hal forget that.
No.
There's a whole series where Guy basically leads an army into I believe it's the Anti-Monitor's antimatter universe. And basically, when Hal tags along, he almost kills him.
Yep.
Right? So...
He's just... And, a lot of people love Hal. I love some things about Hal. Hal lacks conviction a lot of the time.
Except when he goes full Darth Vader parallax.
And yeah, everyone wants to talk about what a sexist pig Guy Gardner is. Guy Gardner never, he hasn't committed genocide. Guy Gardner never became the Spectre as penance for what he did. I'm not saying that excuses things, but Guy is interesting, and he's a Green Lantern in his own right. He has a pure heart on some level, and I don't say that to be like, oh, he's such a good person. But he's a complex person, and he has pure will.
Yeah, exactly. And he doesn't know fear.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. He doesn't give a shit about Bruce. And Bruce can just, knock his ass out a million times. He's never going to stop making fun of him.
No, and he never does.
Ever. And honestly, those interactions are hilarious in that comic.
And Jeff Johns did a lot for Guy when he started revamping the Green Lantern universe because he I can't remember John's exact wording, but he basically said he didn't want Guy to be the blockhead of the DC universe. He wanted him to be the ass kicker of the DC universe.
And he is.
And if you've ever read I don't think Johns actually wrote this. The Recharge miniseries, which was right after Rebirth. So Green Lantern Rebirth brought Hal back. Recharge brought the core back.
Yes.
And Guy Gardner is phenomenal in that. He has a whole speech where he rallies the entire core.
And he goes,
that
he's
is
like,
just unbelievably heroic.
The gist of it is this is we are Green Lanterns. This is what we fucking do.
We're the best.
We are the best. And period. And you're like, damn. And this is the same person that pinched Mary Marvel's ass.
Even though some people are
so not okay.
Some people are going to argue whether or not I Can't Believe It's Not the Justice League actually is canon or not.
I take it as canon because it has some good stories and I enjoy
this guy, this Gardner.
But yeah, he's an asshole and he's problematic and, Mary forgave him, but that doesn't mean that that's okay.
He's also a character that wrestled with mental illness at one point in his canon.
He got hit by a bus.
And he was mentally handicapped.
I'm not laughing at the mental handicap part. There's someone actually illustrated him getting hit by the bus at one point, and it's a really funny panel. It's really bad art.
If I can find it, I'll post it.
He's like wrapped around the front of the bus.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
like
I remember
cartoon
that.
style.
And
he's an interesting character. He doesn't seem to catch a lot of breaks.
Yeah, he's got a lot of tragedy in his backstory.
A lot of really bad shit happens to him. His brother was killed. Yeah, and he's just interesting, and he's a different flavor in the DCU, and I think he's a welcome addition to it because of that.
One of the things you pointed out, and I hadn't thought about this, is that he is actually, because of all that, because of what we're talking about here, he ends up being a much more interesting and nuanced bad boy character than, say, Wolverine.
Oh, absolutely.
Guy Gardner, for instance, will not. Well, there's some stuff in the Red Lantern stuff. He doesn't like just murder people, which is something Wolverine does constantly.
Guy tries very hard not to kill people.
Except for Hal Jordan.
Well, whatever. It's fine.
What has happened in the Justice League 3000 book is Guy Gardner's...
This character, this chauvinistic, male Republican pig of a character...
Yep.
...has been put into a female body.
Yes.
His DNA... has been put into a female body. I think it's important to note that it's his DNA.
Yeah, it's actually something in the critiques that I think is missing, that these aren't actually those characters.
It's not Guy's soul necessarily that has been transplanted.
Yeah, I mean, how would you do that?
Which doesn't discount what people have to say. It just makes it, the conversation needs to be more nuanced, I think.
And because of that, this is not Superman.
Yes.
This is not Batman.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Wonder Woman is a clone too, and the Flash is a clone. There's also a Green Lantern clone.
And the Flash is also female.
But for instance, like the Blue and the Gold, that's the real versions, right? They're the only ones that are Fire and Ice too. You
can't not have Ted and Booster. It doesn't work. It's got to be them.
So in this issue, people are upset because there are things that are being interpreted as being transphobic.
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying they're not. So Superman says some he's like, not to be rude or anything. And this Superman's a fucking dick. He just is.
It's pointed out more than once in
He's
this
an
actual
asshole.
issue that this guy... Okay, just so you know...
And he's stupid.
This Superman's really dumb. He forgets he has certain powers. Like, he forgets he can't fly and jumps out windows. He's a knucklehead.
He forgot he didn't have heat vision, too.
Yeah, he is a jock. He's a complete jock.
If anything, he's kind of like Guy.
Right.
Has been portrayed in the past. So there's a scene where Superman goes, not to be rude or whatever, but Guy has a nice ass.
Is it Batman or
Flash? It's the Flash who says, that's a dude. Like, that's Guy there.
Which is why I'm confused, because it's not. It's his DNA, right?
The problem that article that we read brings...
The women writing comics article?
Yes. The problem that the article brought up that is actually valid is that we actually don't know, because Guy doesn't get a chance to speak on it at all.
Which I'm assuming...
in this particular issue.
...is coming.
Hopefully.
Right?
I would hope so. So my first takeaway from this argument is not to invalidate anything, but merely to say, from my perspective, as a queer person, but as a cis person, I'm just going to wait and see what happens.
Well, that would be the logical thing to do.
Yeah, I don't know if we can pull the trigger on it just yet and condemn it. And some people have brought up some questions, and DeMatteis on Twitter is listening to people and being like, you have some good suggestions, maybe I'll incorporate some of this.
Right, there's no, yeah,
but
exactly.
He's also asking, can you please wait a little while for the story to unfold before you trash the whole thing?
And I really think both of them are just, as am I, just completely confused as to what exactly the problem is. I mean, the Superman character is a jerk. He's saying jerky things. Mm-hmm. So there's kind of a weird fundamentalism involved. Like, why can't you have somebody who is a jerk say jerky things?
Why can't you have problematic characters? I think the argument that a lot of people are going for that needs to be framed correctly is not that Superman is saying this, not that like in the story this is happening, but why is it still a punchline that Guy's in a female body?
But is that okay. The reason it's a punchline, and I think you agree with me here, is not that it's a man in a woman's body.
Mm-hmm.
It's Guy Gardner
yeah.
in a woman's body.
And
that is fucking funny.
I will go to bat for this particular instance and say, solely based on the history of this character and knowing that these writers are building on the history of this character, that I think it's a valid moment. I really do. And if they go into it, I think there might be a payoff.
His name is Guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think the larger conversation, which we'll get into more in the second example, needs to be like, why are we still punching down?
True.
Which is valid.
But I'm also generally uncomfortable with the idea of taboo.
I agree.
Like you can't, it's so serious you can't ever bring it up at all. Like, because this really, the problem I had with that article, and the reason I sent it to you, is the writer of that article actually referred to this as an assault. Now, that is some very loaded language.
It's pretty harsh. And
especially for a book like this.
I can't speak to anyone's lived experience necessarily, but I am very careful about using words like that because assault to me means a very particular thing.
When you say assault, unless you're being incredibly sarcastic and you can get that across, like an assault to my senses, this cupcake was an assault to my senses.
Or if you say like it's a verbal assault or it's a slur.
You are so close to actually saying somebody has committed a crime.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
This is almost weird libel shit.
And this is one article, one opinion, not speaking for everyone else who's upset.
Right. And plenty of people are. But I was really looking at this article.
Yeah, that kind of threw me off.
As kind of an example of the temperament of people that I'm seeing with this issue.
There's a certain level of hypervigilance over this one particular instance that I think is inappropriate.
Yeah.
And maybe that means I'm insensitive, but I don't see how we need to make such a huge issue out of this one moment. I think the conversation, as usual, needs to be like, why is this still the humor level that we go for?
And maybe not even inappropriate that it's there, but inappropriate in the level that it's at. It's a little much. Like when you're accusing people of writing this silly funny book, and it really is, as being an assault.
That's a little excessive.
And part of this, I gotta say, I'm not gonna point the writer out of this, is I think a lot of people, and I don't want to get on too much of a tangent here, have learned from the Anita Sarkeesian fucking model. Now, regardless of what you think about her, she has branded herself, and she has become a name, and she charges a lot of money to speak, and she has made a hell of a lot of bank over what she does, and is basically being inflammatory and wrong at the same time.
I don't necessarily think this article was entirely inflammatory. It brings up some good points.
It does, but
it's that one assault piece that I was really like, you need to take a step back and look at the language that you're...
It did seem to me like it was kind of begging for attention. Like,
well, I mean, that's the journalism style, period.
And there's a lot of people out there who are competing for space,
absolutely.
for ideas, and you have to make your name right. That's what I'm saying is, like, I don't entirely trust this journalistic voice because it feels to me like they're trying to make their name. And
it's clickbait
in the same way like critics like Anita have done by basically putting out these really extreme opinions about things to garner attention.
I agree.
Even though what they're saying is like I said, I don't want to talk about her too much, but it's kind of like 50-50, right?
It's rooted in reality.
It's rooted in reality, even if you're kind of skewing it a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, we spin our journalism. Everything has a bias, and, pieces like this obviously come from a bias. I'm not one to say whether someone's bias is wrong, because I come from biases, but it just... I read it and I instantly got mad, because
that was my reaction.
It's not necessarily the fault of this particular author, it's more the climate of, like, everything is a fucking issue.
Yes.
Everything is the end of the fucking world.
Yes.
And it's like... Okay, so you're taking these, these dudes who prefer to mostly have Three Stooges humor in their comics.
Right.
Who don't respond well to witch hunts, I have to say. Like, they're the wrong people to go after in that way. And then you fucking flame them to death. Not that this article is doing that, but then other people come along and do it too.
It sets a tonal precedent for the way we are going to interact with these creators.
And you're not responsible for the actions of other people.
But in a certain sense, you are.
But you fan the flames.
Right, you're fanning flames.
And just, I'm a little sick of the hypervigilance.
Over every single issue.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
and I understand that we have hypervigilance in
reaction to.
In these mediums because we can't actually, it's easier to get pissed and hurt by something like this than stand up and say, can we have trans rights? Like, can we have housing rights? I'm not saying that it's easier to sit on the internet and do something. I'm saying that it's easier to get something done about something like this than it is to try and change the system so we can have, housing and health care for trans women, for example.
True. It's
we have these
true.
overarching horrible issues for people on the margins who just get shuffled off and killed and just, treated abysmally. I don't necessarily know if we can solve that through a hypervigilance in certain areas of pop culture 100% of the time. I
mean, this is something that's happening basically because things like comics have gone mainstream to a certain extent.
Yeah, so you have a larger audience.
But they haven't. And when I say that, what I mean is I guarantee you if I look at the sales for this book, we are talking no more than 25,000 units.
At least this person who wrote this article read the book.
It's true.
They obviously read the book.
It's true. I don't know if they read the previous installment, the 15 issues of 3000.
I don't think they know Guy Gardner's backstory.
And I don't think they know Guy Gardner's backstory. One of the things that they brought up was how Guy was sexualized.
Guy's always sexualized, though. Even as a dude. There's so many ass shots of him in JLI. It's always booty everywhere.
But it's not the same, right? Because he is a guy.
But, yeah. I actually like female Guy Gardner. I think female Guy, and I'm choosing to say Guy. I'm not assigning a gender pronoun because I don't know how Guy refers to Guy.
At this point, Guy has not, as a character,
Guy
expressed her opinion on this.
Guy has not identified their preference. My instinct is that Guy doesn't give a fuck.
Hilariously, Guy basically goes through that whole issue, punching things and ignoring the rest of the Justice League.
Total badass. Guy is the only person who actually gets anything done.
Yes. And, what do you think, for instance, about the criticism of, the midriff and the boobs and the ass?
I think that's totally how Guy Gardner would dress if Guy was a woman.
Okay. I mean, that's basically what I'm asking.
And that's my own personal opinion. If people want to argue about that, that's fine.
There's another...
I didn't particularly feel like Guy was being fetishized outside of what Superman said.
And honestly, not as bad as some stuff we've seen.
Mm-hmm. Guy's drawn exactly like Lois in Wonder Woman.
She's attractive, but something people don't seem to understand is superheroes are universally drawn as attractive. Now, we can talk about beauty standards in culture as being symptomatic of that, but when you're dealing with characters that are supposed to be physical, emotional, spiritual ideals as archetypes, they're going to be drawn with a certain physical template that shows excellence. It's the same reason why Greek sculpture looks the way it does.
Just does every single female superhero need to be running around in a thong? No.
No, exactly.
I'm saying that to make the point.
Yeah, there are distinctions here, and there are absolutely lines that get crossed.
Yeah, all the time.
But I do see, in this issue, I thought that the Guy character was not really sexualized all that badly. All that much, even.
I thought it was pretty standard.
It was
I didn't really have a problem with it.
There didn't seem to be any, contorted, shots where you see both the boob and the ass that are physically impossible.
Not really. But, I'm also relatively, I'm comfortable with the gender that was assigned to me at birth, for the most part. So I see a female form and I judge it based on my female perspective. I don't know.
Okay, I mean...
I may have less of a problem with it than some trans women might have. And that's fair.
Another issue, and we haven't talked about in this podcast that I'm uncomfortable with, is, like I said, there's kind of a weird conservative fundamentalism involved in this, in which...
Well, we internalize the hierarchies that we try to wiggle out of.
It's coming across, I'm not saying this is the motivation of everybody behind it, but it comes across as that sex is bad, right? Now, I gotta explain something to some people out there. Now, I am a white, middle-class, cis male. Okay?
I'm a white, middle-class, queer, cis female.
Guess what I like? I like women, and I like women a lot.
Me too.
I like staring at breasts and ass.
Me too.
It does not mean I want to objectify them.
Yes.
Now, men are essentially very simple creatures. Is that we, and this is, fact, we get turned on by visual imagery. More than a lot of other things.
Yes.
You know, women are auditory and men are visual. White, cis, male comic book writers and artists are going to draw what they like. It does not necessarily mean if you see cleavage or ass shots that means we're saying all women are meat. Now, I understand that it contributes to a larger cultural vocabulary, but at the same time, when we have the band hammer on every panel of it, like, you're kind of denying a very basic aspect of what men like, and that's why a lot of men react badly to these conversations, because they could be like, "Hey, I'm a nice guy. I've never hurt anybody in my life, but yeah, I like the idea of titty fucking Wonder Woman. You know, like,
dude, she'd kill you.
Power Girl.
She'd also kill you.
It's true.
But she uses. Well, I like Gail Simone's idea. It's clever. I like what she did of using the boob window as a distraction.
Right.
I think that's awesome.
But you understand what I'm trying to say here is that just because men sexualize, it doesn't mean they objectify. They're two very different things. There's a distinction.
I sexualize too.
Yes.
You know, I didn't just read Batwoman because it was a story about, like, because it was a great queer story.
It's also
I was like,
just a great comic.
I'm like, there are just titties everywhere and butts, and I'm like, I'm in hog heaven right now.
And the way Williams drew them,
oh my god. I mean, the art in that is fucking beautiful, and everyone should read it.
That was one of the best titles out of the New 52, by the way.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that I come to comics also with a bit of the male gaze, because I find women, you know, sexually attractive. Right. So I don't necessarily always mind if there's Wonder Woman boobs everywhere. I don't want to put her in pants. If Wonder Woman wants to wear a fucking leotard, Wonder Woman's going to wear a fucking leotard because she can kill all of us. Okay? That's one of those things. Now, does she have to have, like, a shitty contorted waist and, like, nipples flying out of her thing? No, she doesn't.
Quick tangent on this Wonder Woman costume thing, because there have been a couple comments about this recently that drove me fucking crazy. Like, the new creative team has said, like, one of the reasons they really like this new look, which is basically head to toe, put her in a fucking potato sack.
I hate it. I think it's really boring.
It just looks stupid. It looks too 90s for me, for one.
Yeah,
it's like
really
something you put on a
looking.
90s male character.
She looks like an X-Man.
But what they said was
a mutant, sorry.
This relieves us of the responsibility of trying to always second and third guess how we're going to pose Wonder Woman.
That's bullshit, because it's a skin-tight suit. It's the same issue.
No, it's bullshit because it's your fucking job.
Yeah.
If you as an artist can't frame it well, maybe you should have that job. And so George Perez did it just fine.
And so what you're saying is that you're just like, that is a moment where I'm like, you are trying to just appease me, and I don't appreciate it because you're talking down to me now.
And you can't not put Wonder Woman in a sexual position because she simply wears a certain kind of outfit.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what's the matter with you?
Black Canary, you know, in the 80s especially, was in head to toe, and you can still, like, get ass cheeks fucking spread.
Okay, so, and in relation to that, do you know who Cara Delevingne is?
No, I do not.
Cara Delevingne is in the Suicide Squad movie. She plays Enchantress. Okay, she hasn't really done much work.
Okay.
But she went on...
I'm kind of curious. Not a lot of people know who Enchantress is, and I know she was part of Ostrander's Suicide Squad, so I'm interested to see her in that.
Yeah, she kind of has a weird kind of gothic look to her. She looks good. But she went on this whole thing about how all superhero movies are sexist, which is hilarious because, honey, you're in one. And she does this all standing next to, you know, what's her name, playing Harley Quinn, who's, like, half naked.
She's a juggalo.
Yeah.
Harley Quinn is a juggalo.
What? I have no hate for that.
And Harley can dress however the fuck she wants.
Here's a quote from her. Generally, though, superhero movies are totally sexist. Female superheroes are normally naked or in bikinis. No one would be able to fight like that. Wonder Woman, how the hell does she fight? She would be dead in a minute. First of all, okay, this female superheroes are normally naked or in bikinis.
No.
Now, she's talking about the movies. What movie are you talking about? Storm, head to foot. Every X-Men character.
Jean Grey. Yeah,
every X-Men character completely clothed.
Kitty
Black
Pryde,
Widow.
Rogue.
Completely covered.
Well, she's got the boob zipper, but that's okay.
And the problem is that there's not enough women in these movies.
Yeah.
Gamora, same thing. Was Gamora showing off a lot of cleavage and ass? Nope.
No, not particularly. It was just skin tight clothing.
Now, in the greater context of comic books, what she's saying makes a certain amount of sense with that.
What she's trying to get at is that there's not enough, and what most people are trying to get at is that there's not enough representation. There aren't enough women.
The other thing she's saying about the whole not being able to fight like that, I guess you've never watched Ronda Rousey then.
Yeah, she fights in her fucking underwear.
Okay, all those people are professional fighters, and they all fight in their underwear.
Yep. Also, Wonder Woman has the fucking wrist bracelets that deflect bullets.
Yes.
She doesn't need fucking armor.
Yeah.
And when she has armor, you know it's serious and you should be afraid.
Exactly. When she comes with that, like,
Oh
Valkyrie
my
space armor.
God. You're like, oh, the shit's going down now.
Because I always assumed because she had, comparable, invulnerability and strength, like, the whole thing about her is movement, right? And if you read a lot of the better Wonder Woman runs, like, especially the Perez, Wolfman, she's not wearing much. But she is not drawn in a way that's like, come mount me.
For the most part. There are certain shots where it's like, whoa, that's a lot of booty. But yeah, I mean, Diana is a character in particular that I feel that this argument does not apply to.
I agree.
Because Diana is the strongest out of all of them. And because she is who she is and she comes from where she comes from, I fully believe that character chooses to wear what she wears, and if you can't tell her to put on pants. You just can't do it. It doesn't make sense for her character.
Now, though, through history,
every time they try and change it, it fails.
Yeah, but the whole skirt becoming a bikini thing has something that has absolutely happened over time.
Oh yeah, she used to wear a skirt,
and the underwear had just gotten smaller and smaller and smaller.
She doesn't need the Baywatch fucking hip bone leotard. But it can cover her butt.
But the thing is, yeah, you can separate, she can be dressed a certain way. You don't have to pose her in a certain way.
Exactly.
That's your job as a fucking artist. And if you lack the creativity to do that, I don't think you should have that job with that kind of level of a character.
Not at all. We should loop it back into Guy because I don't think we were...
that's all I wanted to go in with this.
I don't think we were done talking about that.
No, so let's get back to this, the transphobia issue of Justice League 3001. So
I'm going to go out on a limb and say I don't think this one in particular merits the amount of vitriol we're seeing.
I agree.
And I'm not singling out this particular writer of this article as being vitriolic because I do think they raised some good points.
I don't think it's above critique.
No, I don't think
I think it's definitely above vitriol.
Definitely don't think it's above critique. Now, do we want to talk about
the next case of this?
Because okay, so I'm pretty sure the author of this article did exactly what I did, which is when I wonder if Guy Gardner has ever been portrayed as a woman before. And then you do what I do. You Google Guy Gardner woman, and the first hit that pops up, you go, what's Gal Gardner number 42?
Gal Gardner Warrior issue number 42,
and
1996.
And then you go and you look, and you marvel at the shittiness.
Yeah.
And what this author has to say about that is spot on. It's just crap.
A lot of the critique I've seen for the 3001 issue should be going to this issue.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, the thing of it is...
But no one's going to read that.
This exactly is what I'm talking about as far as comics going mainstream. No one gave a crap when this issue came out in 96.
And I actually found it on someone's blog where the woman who wrote about it was like, I'm pretty sure the writer of this knew the book was going to be canceled in a couple months.
And it was canceled after 2 or 3 issues, actually.
He was just like, fuck it. Guy Gardner's a woman in this issue.
Now, me personally, I have only read little bits of Guy Gardner Warrior because it's just god fucking awful.
I am going to be embarking on a total comprehensive reading history of this character. Anything that has Guy Gardner in it will pass before my eyeballs, and you will hear me probably complain vociferously around shit like this.
Now, I'd never read this issue.
Oh my god, it is amazing.
Until last night, because
this has everything wrong with it that people are talking about.
Oh yeah, this one is totally what you think it is.
It is balls to the wall, 100% gimmick of tee-hee, it's Guy Gardner with titties.
And basically what happens, the plot of this is Guy Gardner literally wakes up
and is a woman.
He's been turned into a woman
solely because his arch nemesis
Dementor
has kidnapped some supermodels and wants to fuck with Guy Gardner.
Yeah, that's what's I mean, there's a couple hilarious writery things here. First of all, there's no explanation of how he can do this.
None at all.
Like, Dementor can just do shit like this.
Yep.
I was reading it, and the whole time I'm like, well, how?
Like, how did this happen?
How did this happen? After a while, Guy isn't even questioning how it happens.
I'd also like to point out the guy just randomly changes back.
Well, no. They convince him to change him back at the end, remember?
But it's just like poof, and then like there's not even a puff of smoke. Guy's just...
The next panel, he's back
Guy's
to
just
his Arnold body.
And, you know, Warrior in and of itself is a very problematic thing. It's a fucking white dude running around with, like, some war paint.
It's not, but it looks very Native American.
Yeah.
Very,
but, like, he went into the jungle and found this power, and now he's Warrior. It's very...
It's an alien power.
I know. But it's very 80s, like, culturally appropriative.
And because the 90s comics are behind it's the 90s, right?
Uh-huh,
and it's filled with every 90s trope. It looks like McFarlane art. It looks like Rob Liefeld art.
There's this one shot, so Dementor makes Guy walk the runway. And
set to the Right Said Fred music.
Yeah. And model particular outfits, including just like these titty outfits everywhere.
Because that's what you do when you're a woman.
Yeah, and there's this one drawing with Guy of a teeny tiny waist and thighs that are like if you put 6 people's thighs on top of each other. That's
his thighs
like.
are bigger than his whole body.
They're like 6 feet long. It's hilarious.
I stopped at that frame and stared at it. I was like, no.
And it's hilarious because the art is so terrible.
It's atrocious.
But yeah, that is hitting all of those notes of like, you know, Guy goes, how do you cross your arms with these things in front of you? And he's pointing
stuff. He says this stuff.
Yeah, he's pointing to like his fucking porn star boobs.
And every frame of him is basically sexualized.
Absolutely sexualized to the max.
And like full on, we're talking like porno actress type poses.
Yeah.
The whole time.
It's just totally ridiculous. And yeah, that's totally like the entire humor and entire crux of the issue is tee-hee, Guy's a woman.
When he says the stuff about his own breasts, what does his girlfriend say? Like, well, at least you're not pregnant?
Yeah, at least you're not pregnant. All it's missing is a period joke.
And there isn't one, surprisingly, but I think editorial might have pulled them back on that one.
And, you know, I may be unpopular for saying this, but I feel like there are ways you can make period jokes funny.
Technically, you should be able to make anything funny.
I agree.
It's theoretically possible.
But this issue is definitely punching down.
It's also terrible.
Yeah,
like,
it's just awful.
The 3001 thing is actually I enjoyed that issue more than I enjoyed the whole previous run of 3000. I didn't hate the 3000 run, but there were things that were hit or miss for me. Yeah. I thought the first issue, 3001, was like a home run. I loved this fucking issue.
So, for my personal last kind of take on this, I'm just going to say I'm reserving judgment on this until I see more of the series.
Yes. Until we have more elaboration on the character,
I think people are pulling the trigger a little early.